All right, welcome back to SportsLine, everybody. Yours truly, John Burton, with you until the top of the hour. We're going to talk some more Preds hockey. We bring in the Predators beat writer for the Tennessean, good friend of the show, Josh Cooper. Josh, how are you tonight?
Good. Thanks for having me on, John.
Absolutely, my pleasure. All right, let's start with the news of the day. Olli Jokinen comes in, a one-year deal worth reported $2.5 million. Obviously, they're looking for long-term relief at that center position, but this is a guy that they can probably plug in right away. What are your thoughts on the acquisition?
Yeah, it's more shorter term, and David Poyle said he could also play the wing as well. But overall, I think it's a pretty decent move. I mean, if they were spending like $4 million on him, I would kind of err on the side of caution. But $2.5 million for a guy with over 1,000 games, 700 points. I mean, that's pretty decent. I don't think that they're thinking he's going to come in and set the world on fire, but he's good value, and I think they're still working on some other stuff as well. So overall, I think it's a pretty good move for them.
Now, over the weekend, David Poyle did confirm that a trade was on the table for Jason Spezza of the Ottawa Senators, but Spezza did not waive his no-trade clause, did not want to come here. Any news on why he didn't want to come here, why he didn't allow that trade to go through?
Well, I mean, I wouldn't say that he had a trade on the table. Brian Murray, the general manager of the Ottawa Senators, said there was a trade on the table, and David Poyle has vehemently denied that. He just said he inquired about Spezza. I don't know what's going on between those two, John, to be honest. I'm very confused about that situation, but my dad's a lawyer. He always tells me the same thing about these types of situations. It's, what he said, what she said, and somewhere in the middle lies the truth. So did David Poyle have a deal for Jason Spezza? I honestly don't know that, and that's something that only David Poyle truly knows.
Right.
But at the same token, it is kind of becoming strange that Nashville is turning into this place that's ending up on everyone's no-trade list. So that can't feel good for the players here. Certainly can't feel good for a guy like Shea Weber, who is locked here for the next 12 years.
Yeah, that makes no sense to me, Josh. To be honest with you, I mean, they've got Weber, they've got Rene. It's a great city to live in. You and I both know that. The fan base is it's a good fan base. Do you find it interesting that a lot of players say thanks but no thanks when the opportunity to come to play for the Predators here in Nashville comes up?
Well, it's interesting. I actually have a story about this coming out pretty soon. So, kind of a bit of a plug there to just sort of look for that in the Tennessean. But, I see it, and, I think one of the major issues that this team has is that it always looks like it's in rebuild mode. I mean,
yeah,
it's just, it's an expansion franchise that kind of feels like it sometimes, and oftentimes, actually. And I think that that's what players see. Is it that way? I don't think so. I mean, I think it's just a smaller market team, but I think that they just don't see it like that. And, because of that, I mean, if you just sort of kind of go to the realities of the fact that it is a smaller market team and, not always on the rebuild, it's just kind of have to deal with the realities of, today's economy and NHL economy, then I think it would be a little bit different. But, it is a very bizarre thing, just in the sense of I do agree it's a good place to live, very low, or I guess no state income tax, which is big for players,
right.
Warmer weather, which is big for the Canadian players, and a team that seems to be competitive year in, year out with the exception of a couple of years there. So, it's really tough to really understand why. I can see why to some degree, but also I understand where you're coming from in that I don't understand why at the same time.
Right. We're talking Preds hockey with Josh Cooper of the Tennessean. He covers the Predators for that publication. All right, you were writing today about the Predators possibly trying to make a move for Vinny Lecavalier. Any news there?
Nothing at the moment. Vinny Lecavalier obviously has been known to many people is on the trading block, and it seems to make sense only because, the Predators not get Ryan Kessler, didn't get Jason Spezza, didn't get Paul Stastny, they didn't get Olli Jokinen today, but they need somebody to feed James Neal the puck. They need somebody to get him the puck. James Neal, the newest acquisition from last weekend, who was one of the top snipers in the NHL. They need someone who can just pass the puck to him and let him shoot it. And I think Vinny Lecavalier is probably the best option out there right now. Is he a great option right now? I mean, he's 34 years old.
Right.
I think he's got over $16 million left in his contract. I mean, from a value perspective, no. And I think one of the big stumbling blocks there is how much money the Flyers are going to pick up versus how much money the Preds want to pick up. And if I'm the Preds, I wouldn't want to pick up that much at all just because of his age and his relative decline. But at the same token, you have to believe that in Peter Laviolette's system, and they're putting a lot of faith in Peter Laviolette in his system. I mean, David Poyle today said that Peter Laviolette was a guy who really vouched for Olli Jokinen. They're putting a lot of faith in him, and maybe Lecavalier, who signed with Philadelphia, partially played for Peter Laviolette, would want to come here and do the same. So, I don't really know where that process is. I don't think there's really any urgency at the moment, just because I don't see a lot of teams out there in competition on this move with the Preds, maybe the Ottawa Senators. But I don't. It just doesn't look like Lecavalier would want to go play in a traditional market like Ottawa. I just feel like this is really the only option. He has a no trade clause, and it's just it's one of those things where I think the Preds have had their feet held to the fire by some players with no trade clause in the past. Maybe it's a situation where they benefit from it.
Now, Josh, let's talk a little bit more about the acquisition of James Neal. He's a guy I'm familiar with, having worked in Pittsburgh. This guy is a former 40-goal scorer, had 27 goals last year, I believe, and didn't really play a lot of games. I think it's a great move for the Predators. Yeah, you have to give up Hornquist and Spalling, but as Poyle said, you have to give up something to get something. There's a lot of talk about Neal possibly being a head case, or, he was the beneficiary of playing alongside Sidney Crosby and Evgeny Malkin. Well, first to that I say, who wouldn't be a beneficiary of that? Arguably the two best players in the world. I say a change of scenery sometimes does a player good. What say you?
Well, I think I could score 20 goals. Crosby. So, I'm not. I mean, it obviously it's a hard league. I'm not. That's a joke, but. I've heard the same stuff about James Neal. I mean, you have to remember he's only 26 years old. I mean, I'm 31 now, and I remember doing a lot of stupid stuff when I was 26 years old. So, I mean, in terms of him being a head case and having some trouble there, I mean, he isn't that old. On top of the fact that you look at the sample size, even away from Evgeny Malkin, who was the center in Pittsburgh, and I think his last year in Dallas, he had 27 goals. Obviously without Evgeny Malkin before the trade to Pittsburgh, which would have led this year's national team in goals scored. So, right. I mean, he would already be their top offensive option, even without Evgeny Malkin. So, I think that, they gave up some good character players in Hornquist and Spalling. I think, Hornquist is a guy who I think has a bit of a shelf life, and I think we were starting, even though he had a decent year last year, I think that he's not a guy who really has a long-term career in him just because of the way he played. But Spalling's a guy who I think was tough to give up. He played every forward position, was so agreeable, good guy in the locker room. Everyone liked him. But beyond that, you have to give up to get, and I think James Neal is the type of player they had to get here. The only problem is, again, they need someone to feed him the puck. Right. And right now... Last I checked, we don't have a Crosby or Malkin here with the Preds, right? No, I don't think so. And David Poyle sometimes touts Cole Sissons and touts Kalle Järnkrok, the young guy he got for David Legwand. But, I just don't think they have that guy here. I could totally be proven wrong. Who knows what happens with the new coach, and he brings in kind of a different type of mentality, which David Poyle is really touting so highly these days, which I think part of the issue, too, with this team is just they sometimes just have too high expectations or just throw them too high in the media, and then all of a sudden when they don't come up with them, it's just a problem. But, I just don't know who's going to feed them the puck. So, I think that it was a great move. I think they had to get a talent like that. But guys like James Neal need a playmaker, need a playmaking center. I think Joe Thornton in San Jose, who sounds like he's on the market, would be a terrific addition here for James Neal. But, he's still in San Jose. He's not in Nashville. So I think that's where the Preds issues lie. But, again, I have to agree with you, John. Good addition on James Neal. In a roundabout conversational way. I just said it was a good addition. So.
Gotcha. All right, the Predators stay put at number 11 during the draft. They take Kevin Fiala, a Swiss-born forward, with their top pick. What have you been able to learn about this young man?
Dynamic player, short, undersized, but can really make things happen. I think they've sort of compared him to Steve Sullivan a little bit. Mm-hmm. You know, I don't know what he'll turn into, but, I mean, they clearly want to get better at forward, and I think that he's definitely the type of guy who, you know, if you're looking for a skilled type forward, it sounds like, I mean, every team in the draft, they say they got their guy. But, you know, Nashville really sounds like they really wanted this guy, and their scouts were on him. And, I mean, the one thing with the Preds is, you know, they've had their issues with some guys in the past, but I always trust their European scouts. Those guys, I found a lot of good players in the draft. And, you know, I think if they were touting him, then he's probably a pretty good player.
Yeah. We'll get you out of here on this, Josh. And again, we appreciate you jumping on tonight. Josh Cooper of the Tennessean joining us. How about the NHL free agency period as a whole? Do you see any big moves, any big names going elsewhere?
Yeah, you know, I think the Central Division obviously got a lot better. I mean, Thomas Vanek going to Minnesota, you got Paul Stastny going to St. Louis, Brad Richards going to Chicago. I mean, it's just... I mean,
wow, the rich get richer there, huh?
McGinley ended up in Colorado. I mean, they did lose Paul Stastny, but they have so much depth there at forward. I don't think that that's such a major issue. You know, and even the Preds, you know, during this period getting James Neal, I feel like a lot of teams in the Central just loaded up. And obviously Dallas getting Jason Spezza, how can I forget that? So,
right.
You know, I think that's sort of the big storyline is just how much better the Western Conference and the Central Division got in free agency. I mean, and honestly, you look at how much better a lot of these teams got at center, that is a total direct reaction to how good the Los Angeles Kings have been over the last few years.
Yeah.
And I think that that's why you saw all those moves is because it's not so much teams in the Central trying to compete with each other. They're trying to compete with LA.
Yeah.
Because I think everyone knows LA is the team to beat right now.
Yeah, I mean, they definitely proved that they were superior to the New York Rangers. They were just bigger, more physical in that series. So, yeah, again, the Kings winning 2 out of the last 3 Stanley Cups. Josh Cooper, always a pleasure to have you on, and look forward to reading your work very soon.
No worries. Anytime, John. Appreciate it.
All right. That's our buddy Josh Cooper from the Tennessean. We thank him for jumping on. We'll take another break, and we'll come back with your phone calls right after this.